Warship models underway. Wow. Kurt wants to know if he wins the $1.2 billion jackpot from Powerball, what prop from the prop store auction would I personally like? What prop would I like, Norm? Look, this is like at least 3 different people asked me that. What would I like to come away with? The sword Glamdring, Gandalf's sword, is high on my list to have a piece of Peter Lyon's incredible work, Weta's incredible work from that film. The Terminator arm is hard to beat.
Book of the Living.
What's that?
Book of the Living.
Yeah, the Book of the Living is really the main one. The Book of the Living blew my mind more than most other props because handling it felt like I was handling a real artifact. And that I didn't expect. That is rare in propage. Yeah. Thank you, Warship Models. I hope you do win the $1.2 billion jackpot from Powerball. Your favorite prop? Lee Marsh, my favorite prop was the key to Hymenoptera. And I was saying in the video of the key to Hymenoptera that it's cast in white metal. It's a really lovely prop. It functions. It actually opens up like that. And I'm getting ready to build one. I've bought Mold Max 60, and I've bought some pewter, and I have a crucible, and I'm actually going to start doing some white metal casting in the next few weeks because I want a functional key to Hymenoptera. Yep, I'm going to achieve a functional key to Hymenoptera. That's very exciting. Going off your recent trip, Ryan Peck says, going off your recent trip to visit prop store, in an ideal world, what would you like to see happen with important film props when filming wraps up? Of course, everything can't be saved from every film, and I'm sure it's much better nowadays than the past, but conservation, distribution, destruction. Okay, the thing that you need to understand about the business of film is that it's a business. So the CEO of that business isn't the director, it's the producer. The director is like the creative director. He's like the Johnny Ive. That's the director, but you still have Tim Cook, and Tim Cook is the producer of Apple, right? So the business of a film, the producer sets up this enterprise, a company that is a machine for making a movie. And every film has its own business entity set up to make that film. It's a very sensible way to move through this. And, you know, each company gets set up with employment and payroll and workman's comp and all that stuff. But what that means is that when the film is wrapped, the producer then wants to take that company and wrap it up and get rid of it. They don't want any more carried costs. It took me a long time to understand this because I would hear about props being destroyed at the end of a production, and I would think, what mad person would do that? And then I sort of started to understand, knowing producers and understanding how film works, that the producer doesn't want to rent a storage space for all the costumes to hold on to them for a few years in case it turns out the film's a hit and they're valuable. So I understand that mindset. The nice thing is that because prop collecting has become, as you say, more prevalent in the last decade or so, companies like Prop Store are able often to convince producers to store stuff with them until such time as it's time to sell or auction those pieces off. So Prop Store is actually doing what they can for film preservation. But I mean, what's funny is that Hollywood has always kind of ignored its legacy because of this producer's mindset. When about 10 or 15 years ago, Debbie Allen, who had just an unfathomably wide collection of costumes from the latter half of the 20th century of movies, I believe I understood that they were offered to the Film Academy, the Academy of Motion Picture Arts and Sciences, who didn't somehow get them. And that's why they were auctioned off. Now, I may be talking out of school. I may be having some of the facts right. But the fact is that Debbie Allen auctioned off all those pieces. Reynolds. And they went, what's that?
Reynolds.
Debbie Reynolds. Debbie Allen. Debbie Reynolds. I'm sorry. Debbie Reynolds. Thank you. Debbie Reynolds auctioned off those costumes. Yeah, you're probably listening. Why are you talking about Debbie Allen? Debbie Reynolds auctioned off those costumes and they went all over the place. And now the Academy of Motion Picture Arts and Sciences has opened a museum in Los Angeles. We haven't been down there yet. We're dying to get down there. And this is great, but it is late. I'm just going to say that. I think it's a little late. And I think they would agree because the legacy of what film has produced for us in terms of stories and immersive environments and world building and life-changing movies. It's funny, one of the regular subjects of chatting while we were hiking was, what are the movies that made you, to use the phrase of the Netflix show? For me, 1982, 83 were this crazy moment for films. The Thing and Raiders and Alien and Empire Strikes Back and Jedi, and this all happened within this moment. But Back to the Future comes out a little too late to be a key part of my teen years. Thus, it's less in my head than it is in others who are a little bit younger. So the longest way of answering your question is, I hope that the Academy of Motion Picture Arts and Sciences Museum means that they are also providing perhaps a place for producers to send their stuff that they don't want to get rid of or don't want to store with carried costs after they've wrapped the business of making a film. In the meantime, we have places like Prop Store that are doing that. And hey, you guys, anybody wants to store some cool movie costumes here? I'll make the space. I don't have the space, but I will make the space. Okay. Drepik says that they recently purchased a Vogon head from the film adaptation of Hitchhiker's Guide to the Galaxy. Hitchhiker's Guide to the Galaxy. Can you tell I'm a little jet lagged? They also acquired a pair of gloves, and they're both stored right now, but they would like to display them in all their glory. They're huge. Yeah, the Vogon heads are gorgeous pieces. I have looked at that very one. And they're wondering how to build a display that would exhibit the head and gloves nicely. Okay, so there's an inside and an outside to displaying props. I believe those Vogon heads might be foam latex or foam. At the very least, they are a foam rubber, probably a foam latex. And so there's two things to consider in the display. And Prop Store is actually really good at doing this for their displays. First of all, you want to build a holder for it that imparts the least amount of stress to the prop. And I'll give you an example. About now, 10 years ago, I replicated the mecha glove from Hellboy. And in my display of it, I have an aluminum rod with a ball on top, and the glove sits on that. And I thought that was great, except that over the 10 years it's been sitting, because the weight of the bottom is hanging off the glove, the thing has separated down here. That's poor design on my part, and I need to pull it down and repair it and redo its internal structure. The whole goal with an internal structure is to hold on to it as gently as possible. So just imagine placing it on a thing so it just sits there. That's what you want. The gloves would be a little bit easier. You can probably take some armature wire and bend it and then maybe put a cotton glove around that and then put that in there. You want to make sure not to use things like rubber-based glues on the internal parts that you might have holding up the prop. They can off-gas, and you have to think, it's my recommendation that one thinks archivally about holding on to these props. And that means using acid-free paper, using linens, not using a lot of glues in terms of the internal structures, using stable plastics like styrene or acrylic to hold on to it. You don't want to I wouldn't cast some resin piece to hold on to it, because even urethane resin off-gasses. And that off-gassing can affect the prop in a very negative way. If you've ever seen how newspaper yellows, that's because there's acid in that paper, and as it's exposed to air, it slowly yellows over time. That is non-archival. If you go to the art store, they will have things like archival linen tape for attaching drawings to mat board. And the mat board itself is called acid-free, specifically because it's acid-free. So and don't just go ahead and look up acid-free conservation. There are all sorts of wonderful materials that can be utilized and should be utilized. You can, if you have soft parts in the head, you can use poly batting to hold on to it. I would use linen to anything that's going to touch the inside of the prop. On the outside, ultraviolet light is your enemy, especially with the foam latex. It's going to slowly dry over time. It just does that. But if you have any direct sunlight on it, it will do all of its aging in a very short period of time. So if it's in a prop room that has no windows, this is great. If it's in a prop room with windows, I would recommend going to the auto window tinting store and buying some high UV protective window tinting and applying it to the glass. Guillermo del Toro did this to every window in Bleak House himself, I believe he told me. Yeah, so that takes care of the inside, acid-free archival materials to hold it up gently, and the outside, ultraviolet light is your absolute enemy. I possess an original casting of Admiral Akbar from Phil Tippett's original molds. I bought it on eBay. It is latex. It is still supple. And that's because it is stored in my shop in the one place farthest from any ultraviolet light. Like no light from this skylight gets over there. And that's why it is still supple. Great questions. Okay. Thank you so much for watching. If you'd like to support us even further, you can by becoming a tested member. Details are, of course, below, but it includes all sorts of perks, and we're building them all the time. You get advanced word and behind-the-scenes photos of some of our projects. Questions, you get to ask direct questions during my live streams, and we have some members-only videos, including the Adam real-time series of unbroken, unedited shots of me working here in the shop. They are weirdly meditative. Thank you guys so much. I'll see you on the next one.